President-elect Donald Trump, in a fiery press conference, says he will not rule out using military force to acquire Greenland and the Panama Canal. Holy shamoly. Good morning, Cooner Country. Okay, we touched on this issue in the last hour of the show, and right on cue, Trump held yesterday, right after the show almost, in fact, a very passionate, at times heated, fiery press conference in which he talked about a lot of very important issues, what he wants to focus on in his second term. He will be inaugurated, as we now know, because he was certified on January 6th in less than 2 weeks. And in particular, the issue now that has really gained a lot of media attention and made news, not just here in America. I'm telling you, in Canada, where I'm broadcasting from, because of my dad passing away, and now the funeral is over. We're just taking care of his will and his final wishes and demands. So we'll be coming back in about a day or two. But as I'm broadcasting from Canada, trust me when I tell you this, everybody on the street is talking about Trump. Everybody on the street here in Canada is talking about that press conference yesterday. It is news made around the world. And here is exactly now what President Trump is laying down, and it is nothing short of almost a revolution in foreign policy. So, as you know, we were, most American students, kids, were taught this in high school, or at least they used to be taught this in high school. The foundational principle of American foreign policy is what is called the Monroe Doctrine, which was stipulated by President Monroe and his Secretary of State from Massachusetts, from the famous Adams family, John Quincy Adams, the Secretary of State. And in a nutshell, the Monroe Doctrine laid down the principle that the United States would be the dominant, preeminent power in the entire Western Hemisphere. And the reason why is that they did not want the European powers, whether it's France, Britain, Russia at the time, to interfere within America's backyard for fear that eventually it would threaten us here, the homeland. So it was essentially saying, we have our sphere of influence. Great powers have spheres of influence. America is a great republic. Our sphere of influence is the Western Hemisphere. We will be the dominant power in the Western Hemisphere, North America, Central, South America. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because Trump now is laying down what he wants to create, which is the Trump doctrine in foreign policy. And in particular, as he began to outline yesterday in a very important press conference, he wants to expand the definition of the Western Hemisphere to include Greenland. He wants Greenland to be part of the United States. And he's now essentially articulating a new Monroe Doctrine, the Trump Doctrine, in which Greenland, the Panama Canal, and maybe even Canada itself would become either American territories, a 51st state, as in Canada, or the Panama Canal to be returned to the United States back under American control. Let's take Greenland, because that's the one now that's got everybody all hot and bothered. So, Trump's thinking, and he is strategically thinking now for the 21st century, is that the Arctic, and remember, Greenland is the largest island in the world. It is a massive landmass. Most of it is covered in ice. 9 to 10 months of the year, it is a harsh, brutal winter. A territory under Denmark. It is a colony of Denmark. It's got autonomy for domestic affairs, but foreign policy, security policy, it is still run from Copenhagen, the capital of Denmark. Greenland only has 57,000 inhabitants. It is very sparsely populated. It's not even the whole population of Greenland. I don't even think is a small city. Maybe a large town by American, standards. 57,000 is peanuts. Well, Donald Trump, to show you how serious he is, sent his son, Donald Jr., and a team that will be leading the negotiations, he hopes, with both the Greenlanders and with the Danes, to make Greenland an official territory of America. Why? Because the Arctic now is full of natural resources. And in particular, Greenland has some of the rarest minerals in the world. These rare minerals, these rare earth minerals underneath the ice are the kinds of materials that you need, raw materials, for cell phones, for manufacturing, for electronics, but in particular for the modern military, to build missiles, to build tanks, to build fighter jets, to build warships. And China has the greatest amount of rare earth minerals. 70% of it is in China. Now, this is why we are so dependent upon our supply chains upon China. China is hunting the world for even more rare earth minerals. That's why they're in Afghanistan. And what do you think China now wants? They want Greenland. Russia wants Greenland because they know that those rare earth minerals are strategically, for their economic security and for their ability to project power, will be fundamentally decisive and important. And so Trump is now really realizing that if we do not get those rare earth minerals in Greenland, we are going to be completely dependent upon China. They will have us by the tonsils. And so Trump is now telling the American people, and in particular, he is telling the Russians and the Chinese, back off Greenland. It's ours. It won't be yours. It falls under our sphere of influence. And so yesterday, at a major press conference, he then was asked by a reporter, well, I know you want Greenland, but does that mean even using military force? Are you going to rule out using military force to either get control of Greenland or reacquire control of the Panama Canal, which, as you know, is now run by two seaports controlled, you guessed it, by China? A lot of global trade and shipping goes right through the Panama Canal. And so Trump is basically saying China now is in our hemisphere. They've got firm control over the Panama Canal, and soon they're going to grab Greenland if we don't make some kind of a move to bring that island under our influence and under our control. And so Trump threw down the gauntlet. If I need to use military force, I will. Roll cut one, Mike.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the House.
And so we'll get to the Panama Canal in a second. By the way, he's completely right on the Panama Canal. I mean, we built it. We financed it. We maintained it. under Jimmy Carter, who's now passed away and lying in a rotunda at the on the Capitol Hill. Jimmy Carter gave it back to the Panamanians for nothing, literally for nothing. And they charge massive passage fees to our ships, to our military, and now it's under the control of two seaports are controlled by China, which control essentially the Panama Canal. We didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama. And Panama is now abusing the gift that we gave them. And I think Trump is completely right. Either you guys tell China to get lost and stop ripping us off when we use the Panama Canal, or we're going to take it back. Now, Greenland is the big one, because that's where all these minerals and natural resources are. My friends, the question now before us is, should the United States make a deal to acquire Greenland? And is Trump right to say, if need be, I will send in the military to annex it? Your reaction, your calls, next. 620 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, so let me ask all of you, Cooner country. Trump now is laying out the foreign policy agenda for his second term, and it is now the Trump doctrine. He wants to reshape American foreign policy in a way that we have not seen really since the Monroe Doctrine, as I said in my opening monologue, 1823. So he now is saying America is going to reassert its sphere of influence over the entire Western Hemisphere. China will no longer be able to control the Panama Canal. China will no longer be able to penetrate our backyard, and in particular, Greenland will fall under America's sway and influence. He wants to purchase it, ultimately acquire it, annex it. Now, apparently, according to Don Jr. and the team that landed yesterday on the Trump plane, when they landed in Greenland, the capital Nuuk, N-U-U-K. So N-U-U-K, population about 20,000. Again, very sparsely populated. He said, forget what the government of Greenland is saying. It's a leftist government. The people on the ground are very pro-MAGA, pro-Trump, pro-America. And so here is now the situation. Greenland is essentially an autonomous territory, as I said, of the Kingdom of Denmark. They want to fully break away from Denmark. In about a year or two, they're already in the process of becoming a sovereign, independent state. So they will become independent and secede from Denmark. It's no longer a question of if, it's now only a question of when. So the question then is, when Greenland becomes independent in a year, 2 years, whatever the process takes, can Greenland stand on its own? 57,000 people, no military to speak of, hardly any infrastructure. Yes, very rich in resources, very rich in raw materials. As I said, rare earth minerals, whether it's cobalt, lithium, graphite, everything that you need for modern day electronics, technology, as I said, for military, for missiles, tanks, jet fighter jets. That's why the Chinese are coveting Greenland. Trump's argument, and I think on this he's on very solid ground, Greenland will either fall under Russia's influence, under China's influence, unless we beat them to the punch and say Greenland is part of our sphere of influence in the Western Hemisphere, and let's offer Greenland either some kind of an economic partnership or even open the door to them becoming a full territory. As for him threatening to use military force, that's Trump being Trump. He's using it for leverage, and he's also sending a clear, unmistakable message to China in particular: back off. You will never get your hands on Greenland. It will be ours. Russia, the same thing. Don't even think about it. So, my question to you, do you think Trump made a mistake yesterday in threatening to use potentially, or at least not ruling out, military force to get control of Greenland and to regain control of the Panama Canal? The left is going berserk. I'm sorry. I mean, they're losing their minds. You've got the New York Times. You've got the Washington Post. I thought CNN, really, I thought they were going to get a heart attack. I thought some of the people, some of their hosts, I thought they were going to get a cardiac arrest, drop dead right there on the air. Trump is a dictator. Trump is an expansionist. Trump is a militarist. Trump is an invader and a conqueror. Trump is nothing more than an American version of Putin. You see, we told you. He's Hitler. He's a threat to democracy. He wants to send troops to invade other countries. In reality, do I think Trump really will send in troops to annex Greenland? No. But he's using the threat of force as a deterrence against China, against Russia, and he's basically telling the people of Greenland, not only can we offer you economic prosperity, but we can offer you military protection and military security. So when you leave Denmark, do you really want to be on your own? Because if you're on your own, you're going to get swallowed up, gobbled up, either by China or by Russia. And according to Don Jr., he says there is strong sentiment on the ground in Greenland for Greenland to become a part of the United States. So let's unleash the hounds. I want to hear from you, Cooner Country. I want to take calls. Trump, should he have threatened to use military force? And is it now time for the United States to acquire Greenland the way we acquired the Alaska through a purchase? Remember the Louisiana purchase? We have bought important pieces of the United States in the past. Is it time to buy another territory? All of your calls, 617-266-6868, right after this short break. 6:30 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, Trump yesterday in really a very important press conference, at times heated, passionate, combative. Trump now throws down the marker. A new foreign policy for the 21st century, the Trump Doctrine. Greenland, a territory of the United States. Panama Canal returned to the United States. And for Trump, maybe the crown jewel, Canada, the 51st state. That one may be a bridge too far. But as Trump said, when it comes to the Panama Canal and Greenland, he is not taking no for an answer. Should we acquire Greenland and should we regain control of the Panama Canal? 617-266-6868. Lines are loaded. Heather in Rockland, you're going to kick us off, Heather. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Hey, Jeffrey, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I'm so sorry about your father.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. When I heard that, I felt really bad. So yesterday was the first time that I ever heard of him wanting to take over on your show, when you mentioned it on your show yesterday, of Trump wanting to take over Greenland. When you were talking about it yesterday, I'm like, this is why the American voted for Trump, because he's not another politician and he's not another lawyer. I mean, he's a businessman. He must have done his cost analysis before he even mentioned it. I think, with not thinking a whole ton about it, I think it makes perfect sense for us to take Greenland. And as far as the Panama Canal, I think we should definitely take that back. Absolutely.
Well, Heather, this is what I think. This is why I think Trump stands out from everybody else. And I know this term has been overused with Trump, but it's true. He plays three-dimensional chess. And so, many people in Washington, they look at Greenland, they're like, what? What? It's ice. It's cold. It's tundra. It's basically frozen tundra. Who the hell wants Greenland? And Trump is like, no. It's not what's above the ground. It's what's underneath the ground. That's where, and by the way, it's literally one of the most resource-rich islands, territories in the entire world. Now, what Trump understands, and I think this is his genius, is that what gold and oil used to be, rare earth minerals now have become the gold and oil of the 21st century. And the reason why I know this is because his security team is, basically they've been talking about the importance of Greenland, and they go, look, you don't understand. This is really about countering China. China has nearly 70% of the world's rare earth minerals. Afghanistan, by the way, has a big chunk, huge deposit of rare earth minerals, which is why the Chinese are in Afghanistan. And they made a deal with the Taliban. They go, we don't care what you guys do above the ground. You guys want Sharia law. You want to chop people's heads off. You want to enslave women. We couldn't care less. We want what's underneath. Now, the reason why these rare earth minerals are so important is that if China continues to have its dominance, we cannot ever become economically independent from China. Everything that's now made in terms of technology, communications, the military in particular, you need graphite, lithium, cobalt, all these rare earth minerals. China controls most of it. And so Trump is saying, look, I want to break free from China's control and dominance that over the United States, especially under the last 4 years of Biden. For us to do that, we have to create our own independent supply chains. If we're dependent upon China for all the rare earth minerals to make our tanks, to make our warships, to make cell phones, to make our electronics, we're done. They own us. We need Greenland to be economically independent and free from Chinese control and Chinese domination. And that's why he's saying, look, I'm even willing to send in the military. Now, it's not option one, it's not option two, but he's basically telling communist China, enough. We're now going to stand up to you, and we're going to bring the supply chains back to the United States. And that goes through Greenland. And so, remember, they laughed in the 19th century when we bought Alaska. Everybody keeps saying, Heather, oh my God, this is so unprecedented. Oh my God, he's a militarist, he's a dictator. I'm like, would it kill you to pick up an American history textbook, for God's sake? We bought Alaska for a song from Russia. And at the time, people laughed at us, saying, who the hell wants Alaska? All they saw were trees and snow. And then they found gold. They found a lot of oil, natural resources. It turned out to be the deal of the century. The Louisiana Purchase under Thomas Jefferson. I mean, I could go on and on and on. We have bought key parts of the United States from foreign powers. Why can't we do it again with Greenland? It worked. It worked for Jefferson. It worked for then the 1867 was under Andrew Johnson, but basically it worked for the Republicans in the 1860s when they got Alaska. So if Alaska was good enough for us, if Louisiana and parts of the entire American Southeast are good enough for us, why shouldn't Greenland be good enough for us? What say you, Heather?
Questions and a comment. First of all, when I listened to his press conference yesterday, I didn't really see these as my friend Yanni would call them libtards, the libtard journalists trying to paint. I felt like they were trying to paint him in a corner when they were asking the questions whether he would take over militarily. He didn't really come out. When pressed, he just said, "I'm not going to answer that." Like, I didn't feel like he said, "Oh, we're going to come in with the military and take over." I mean, that is not what he said. it was like, which annoyed me with that when those stupid journalist was asking the questions. The other thing I have a question about is maybe like we would make money as you said from the minerals and stuff like that from, if we take over Greenland. As far as Canada goes, wouldn't we, if we, I don't want to say acquire Canada, but because I don't understand a lot about this stuff, I'm not going to pretend that I do. But if per se took over Canada or merged with Canada, I guess you could say, wouldn't that, that would expand the tax base, a lot. So wouldn't that cut down some of the debt, or would that make it more debt? And that's the other question. I think the Greenland definitely is a great investment, but as far as taking over Greenland, I feel like the libtards want it for themselves. Like you said yesterday, the globalists, they want that, just like they wanted the back in the floods there up in North Carolina, there, the Ashland underneath for, I forget the materials, but so it all makes sense. Even and as far as Hawaii goes, same thing with the fires, and they wanted that land, so that's what they're gonna spin this around. But I didn't feel like he came out and said,
no, you're completely right, Heather. No, it was complete. You're right. No, again, it's the media trying to portray him as this, military monster. No, what he just said was, and I agree with him, I'm not taking anything off the table. And why? Because the Chinese and the Russians are already in the Arctic. They're very aggressively pursuing resources in the Arctic. So he's saying, look, if Russia or China make a military move on Greenland, I'm not going to take military action off the table. What are you guys, nuts? So he's basically saying, no, I'm not taking anything off the table. But look, he's sending a negotiating team right now. He wants a deal with Greenland. He wants it to be done voluntarily. He wants the people of Greenland to decide for themselves if they want to join the United States. He's making a very good offer to them. What he's basically saying is, look, Greenland has been mismanaged for a very long time. And they look at Alaska in particular. You talk to every Greenlander, and they go, why can't we be as prosperous as Alaska? Alaska is rich in resources. We're rich in resources. Because Alaska is part of the United States, and many of them would say we'd love to be part of the United States. We'd be much better off part of the United States than under Denmark, for example. Never mind Russia or China. So Trump is basically saying, let's court him. He called into Greenland yesterday with Don Jr. there, and his negotiator, who's going to be negotiating with the Greenland government, his name is James Blair. He was there as well. And he spoke to many leaders in Greenland, and he says, "Look, you've got a beautiful country, and the potential here is endless, and it'll benefit us, the United States, obviously, but man, will it benefit you." He goes, "We'll bring in business investment. We're going to bring in American money. We're going to have you guys be developed. You just look at Alaska. That's your future." And they're looking at themselves and saying, let's go. So, it's not this idea that, tanks are going to roll into the capital of Greenland. And before you know it, this is going to be like what Putin did in Ukraine. All Trump is saying is, really, it's to China. Don't think of gobbling up or taking over Greenland. Because if I need to, I will use military force. In other words, you guys aren't getting it. I want you to know right now. And the other message he's sending, Heather, is that he's now telling China that he's serious as a heart attack about bringing our supply chains back to the United States. We're not going to be dependent on you anymore. You may have us over the barrel on rare earth minerals for now, but soon I'm going to get Greenland. And when I get Greenland, forget it. We'll have all the cobalt, all the lithium, all the graphite, all these rare earth minerals that we need so we can completely take care of our own military, our own manufacturing, everything that we need for our supply chains. So basically, it's a declaration of economic independence. So, look, he understands the threat of China, and he's countering the threat of China in our own hemisphere. That's why he's moving so hard on Greenland. I think is brilliant. Just my opinion. You may disagree. Heather, as always, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay. Trump now says Greenland will become a territory of the United States. It's a key objective of his second term. Agree, disagree. 649 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I just want to play, the lines are loaded, by the way. I just want to play the cut one more time. So he's now asked by a reporter, we know now you want Greenland. You made it very clear. You want to acquire it. Panama Canal. You want it returned to the United States. Are you willing, though, to rule out, this is the exact question that was asked, rule out military or economic coercion? In other words, you're not going to send in the troops and you're not going to apply, sanctions or whatever to force them to bend to your will. Listen now to Trump's response. Roll cut 1A, Mike.
You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages.
Oh, amen, brother. Oh, my God. When I was a young boy, I couldn't believe that Jimmy Carter had given up the Panama Canal. That was in 1977. That's when he signed the infamous treaty. And then it was slowly handed back to Panama. And then in 1999, 25 years ago, fully under the control of the Panamanian government. And by the way, Trump is completely right. China now, as I said, operates 2 seaports in the Panama Canal. They essentially control it coming in and leaving. So it's basically under the control and influence of Beijing. Now, that wasn't the deal. The deal was it goes to the Panamanians and the Panamanian government for Panama, not for China. And by the way, they're ripping us off. That's the other thing. It was such a bad deal. What Jimmy Carter did was such an atrocious deal. Why? Because not only did he give it back, when he never will give it, gave it away. He gave it away. We built the Panama Canal. We paid for the Panama Canal. We maintained the Panama Canal. This was ours from the beginning. And not only does he give it away to Panama, but he doesn't get at least a provision in the treaty saying for American ships and for American military vessels, free passage. Instead, we pay through the nose, our companies, our ships, our military, to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific through the Panama Canal. We pay massive fees. And that's why Trump is so angry. He goes, A, you're ripping us off, number one. Number two is a gift to you. And you guys, because you all got bought and paid for, because the Panamanians are corrupt as hell, the Panamanian government is corrupt as hell, so Beijing bought them off. Now you've given it back to China, essentially. Well, we never gave it to China. We gave it to you. Well, now we want it back. I am with Donald Trump, not 100, 1,000%. Agree, disagree. Mel in New York. Thanks for holding, Mel, and welcome.
Oh, yes. Good morning, Jeff. Happy New Year to you and the kids and Grace.
Thank you. All the best to you and your family, Mel.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Oh, yes. Yeah, Jeff, that Panama Canal was put there for a reason to save us time in transport and for military reasons to move our equipment. And to have our arch enemy in charge of that is totally insane. Jimmy Carter, he would have won the worst president award of American history if not for Joe Biden. So, but anyway, yeah. And as far as Greenland goes, Trump's, he's saying, well, people, when you hear the term, well, I'm on the right side of the dirt. Oh, and another thing, Jeff, about your dad. I'm very sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
He's in
Thank
a better
you, Mel.
place. I mean, yes, God bless him. But, you hear the term, oh, we're on the right side of the dirt. Well, Trump's looking at it. You might think you're on the right side of the dirt. But, like you were mentioning before, what's under the dirt is what's important. That was, our manufacturing base, we were looked at as the manufacturing hub of the world. Everything that was made here in the United States, the rest of the world wanted it. So we have to get back to that. I live about 25 minutes north of Schenectady in New York. If we had the General Electric plant, it was down, it employed 35 to 40,000 people around the clock for between 3 shifts. And it wasn't a family in the Capital District area, Albany, Schenectady, Troy, Saratoga, Glens Falls, that didn't have at least one member of a family that worked at that plant. So, I mean, we have to get back to that. You look at the city that plant was in, Schenectady. It's like a wasteland now. When they pulled out the place went to hell. The houses they started dilapidating and falling apart, and people started moving out. It started getting sparse. Little mom and pop businesses that thrived as support to that company, as far as restaurants, diners, different small manufacturing plants that made small things that the bigger plant could use. I mean, it all disappeared. It's like somebody shot a bomb off and the place just went to heck. But anyhow, yeah. And as far as Greenland goes, I think that that's a good move, because if we don't do it, our arch enemy, as you mentioned before, China is going to get in there. They've already got Africa, good parts of Africa. They're using children as slave labor to pull lithium out of the ground, without any sort of safety measurements for the health of those poor people. I mean, if we don't do it, somebody else will. And then there's another issue that I wanted to mention to you too. I think that this Susie Wiles, who is the chief of staff of President Trump, she's running that same old mantra as far as, we're going to get the criminal illegals out of here. But what about, when your foot stepped across that border, I don't care who you were, that was an illegal act. Everybody's got to go.
I agree. Mel, I completely agree.
100%.
Every illegal is a criminal. I understand. Look, obviously, you can't round them all up at once. I get it, right? So, you got to go after some people first and then others. I get that. So, yeah, you want to go after the most violent, the most dangerous, those that pose the greatest threat. So, yeah, you go after MS-13, Tren de Aragua, those crazy Venezuelan gangs that have now infiltrated our country, terrorists, murderers, rapists, child molesters. I get it. But every illegal is a criminal. They all got to go. To me, there's no negotiation on this. So I agree completely with you, Mel. Every single illegal has to be sent back. Period. Full stop. Mel, as always, thank you very much for that call. No, look, just quickly on this Greenland thing, because I want to take more calls. We live in a completely different world than we did, say, 50, especially 100 years ago. And which Trump, as a businessman, understands that. Now, as I said yesterday, and this bears repeating, it's not like Jeff Bezos is already in Greenland. Bill Gates is already in Greenland. These globalist billionaires are already trying to set up and mining operations to get the rare earth minerals from underneath the ground. Everybody knows how valuable Greenland is. And what Trump is saying is, look, either the globalists get it, a la George Soros, for example, or, Bezos or Bill Gates, or the Russians get it, or the Chinese get it. Someone is going to get it. This idea that somehow Greenland is going to be independent from Denmark, And then just on its own, 57,000 people, no military to speak of, sitting on one of the most resource-rich islands, a huge, massive territory, and people are just going to leave them alone? I mean, this is fantasy. You're living in a naive utopian dream world. So, either the globalist billionaires who are already starting to gobble it up, either they're going to grab it, or the Chinese are definitely they're interested. They're already circling Greenland. They're already looking to make deals, or Putin says he wants it. So, Trump is saying, no, I'm going to get it for America. Now, look, I didn't know this. I'm educating myself in the entire process. I had no idea that to build a cell phone, you need these rare earth minerals. So you can't even make a cell phone now without, lithium or cobalt. In other words, everything, our warships, our missiles, our tanks, our fighter jets, our computers, iPads, iPhones, all of it now, you need these rare earth minerals. Well, look at it from Trump's point of view. I'm going to have China dominate rare earth minerals? So they're going to have most of the world's supply? So they can control whether we have missiles, our military, our technology. Basically anything we make will be dependent and reliant upon China. He goes, no. This competition for rare earth minerals is to decide who will be the preeminent power in the world and whether America can truly be economically independent again. You cannot bring manufacturing and jobs and supply chains back to the United States if we don't have rare earth minerals. And America is blessed. We're a bountiful country, big natural resources. But the one thing we lack are rare earth minerals. According to the Wall Street Journal that I read yesterday, only about 1% of the world's rare earth minerals is in America. The biggest deposit is in China and in Asia. Afghanistan has has a large deposit as well, but another mother deposit is Greenland. And that's why Trump is saying, look, we've got a choice. Either Jeff Bezos and George Soros get it, Russia gets it, China gets it, or we get it. Well, I'd rather that we get it. I'm with Trump. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868 is the number. Mike, who do you want me to go to next? Larry in Leominster. Thanks for holding, Larry, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Larry.
Sir, first of all, I want to wish you and your family my warmest, sincerest condolences.
Thank you.
I know it's a rough time. I went through this 4 years ago. It's never easy from being a child or being an adult. Real quick, though, I had sent a childhood neighbor friend of mine holiday wishes, Merry Christmas and whatnot. And he replied back and he said, Merry Christmas to you, Larry from Leominster. I was like, oh, that's weird. And he had told me that not only does he know who I am, he is a huge fan of yours. So I just want to give a shout out to Michael. He knows who he is. He's a big fan of yours, sir. So getting into this, it always baffled me. Clinton was great for it. Obama was worse for it. That they would deliberately say, oh, we're not going to do any military intervention. That's off the table. I'm like, why would you give your hand away? You know, it's like a poker person telling the guy across from him exactly what they have and what they're not going, and what they're not capable of doing. It's an option. There was I think he was in front of the Chinese, maybe the Chinese president, and he took a phone call and he ordered the assassination of Soleimani right in front of them.
Yes.
And he hung up like nothing happened. And all looking at him like, this man's insane. He's capable of anything. That's the president I want. I want all the foreign leaders to go, this guy will do anything for America. And it baffles me that people don't understand that.
Well, Larry, look, according to people in his transition team, and I got to be careful how I couch this. This is what they said to me, and I believe them completely. They go, no, the reason why he said we're not taking the military option off the table for both the Panama Canal and Greenland is because this was a direct, strong message to China. In other words, it's deterrence. Like, don't even think about acquiring it or gobbling it up or trying to swallow it up, because we're willing to go to the mat on this if need be. You know, you guys tell us Taiwan is in your backyard. Hong Kong is in your backyard. That there are things that fall under your sphere of influence. Fine. This falls under our sphere of influence. So this goes back hundreds of years, right to the Monroe Doctrine. This has been the keystone of American foreign policy for over 2 centuries. We will not allow other great powers to meddle in our backyard, period. And Greenland is in our backyard. Panama, hell, we built it. We literally built it, financed it, paid for it, maintained it. It's ours. We gave it away as a gift to the Panamanian government, and they slapped us in the face. Because then China moved in and they basically handed it over to China. Well, no, now we want it back. You abused our gift. We want it back. So, Larry, I'm with you all the way. You never take anything off the table. And Trump, as a businessman, as a strategic thinker, as a patriot, as a nationalist, he's thrown down the gauntlet. He's telling the world, no, we're going to be now reliant on ourselves for rare earth minerals. We're going to get Greenland, and we're going to be economically independent, economically self-sufficient. Our days of relying and being dependent upon China are over. And the reason why, by the way, he wants Canada to merge with the United States. Now, he says, look, it's got to be voluntary. It's up to the Canadians. You know, if you guys want it, we can make it happen. If not, don't blame me when I slap a 25% tariff. That's what he's really reacting to, saying, look, we're getting trade deficits with Canada. We're sustaining Canada. We're subsidizing Canada. You're not a state. If you're a state, we're willing to subsidize you. But you're another country. A good neighbor, a friend, an ally, yes. But you're still another country. Well, why should we keep subsidizing you? So he says, now look, you become part of the United States, your taxes will get a hell of a lot lower. Your regulations are going to get lower. You're going to have our full military protection. Canada will prosper as a state within the United States. Trump wants to create a super state. That's an American super state. In other words, let the United States manifest destiny, as it was called in the 19th century. Let North America become one large, massive American republic. And he believes by doing that, then we can counter the rise of China. We'll have the Panama Canal. We'll have the resources of Greenland now, the rare earth minerals. We'll have the massive economy of Canada and all of their massive wealth and resources as well. We can counter China. We can counter any country in the world. So it's not a slogan for him. Really, think about make America great again. Well, Trump, as a strategic thinker, is saying territorially, resource-wise, natural resources, if we really want to be truly great, you give me the Panama Canal back, control of Greenland, Canada is the 51st state, no power on earth can stop us, not even China. Larry, do you support the Trump doctrine? Do you think it's viable? Do you think it's what we need for the 21st century?
It's still your line, not 100%, 1,000%, Jeff. What people, and you're going to hear mostly the blowback is going to be from these environmentalist nut jobs that's saying, oh, you just want to rape the land, do this, do that. You give an example, and I think it's hilarious that he's going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. That is so funny to me. But I think it was Obama that had banned oil exploration in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes.
all the environmentalists say, oh my God, it's going to be saved. What they don't realize is China's already in there taking the oil. We just can't touch it, which, again, is another thing that baffles me. What Biden did along all the coasts and stuff, all these environmental nut jobs go, well, that land is protected. No, it's protected from us getting our own resources. China's going to find a way. Russia will find a way to get it. And why would we want that? We want those resources. And it's the same with Greenland. And it's like you said before, it's a strategic move as well for militarily. Not to put bases in there or anything, but that's a vulnerability to us in the North. We don't want China up there. We don't want Russia up there. You know,
well, and you see, and Larry, look, you hit the nail right on the head. And I think this is what liberals don't understand. China and Russia already are very active in the Arctic. For example, just to give you an example, Russia under Putin, to their credit, have 24 icebreaker ships. Why are they have all these icebreaker ships? Because they're getting all the oil in the Arctic. The Arctic is sitting on a ton of oil. And now we have the kind of technology, because this is not 50 or 100 years ago. Now we can actually extract massive amounts of oil and natural gas from, places like the Arctic. We have that kind of technology. And the problem, and that's another reason why Trump wants Canada, there's many reasons, and Greenland, is because America, we have Alaska, God bless America for that. But the problem is, through Alaska, we still have only limited access to the Arctic. So if we really want to compete with China and Russia in the Arctic, where there's almost unlimited amounts of oil, Trump is saying we need Greenland at a minimum. But if we could get Canada, we got them, literally, we've got them all. We've got Russia and China over a barrel. So Trump is thinking, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, he's living in the real world in 2024. And everybody keeps telling him, but you can't do that. And Trump's like, why not? We bought Alaska. We've got, as I said, the Louisiana Purchase. We bought the entire American Southeast. What are you guys talking about? So we've bought, key states and key territory in the past. Why can't we do it again? Where is it written that we can't do it again? Now, we're not going to force them. We're not going to send in the military and, at the barrel of a gun, you got to become part of the United States. If the people of Greenland want, and I'm telling you, forget what the government says. See, that's the other lie. You have all these media outlets saying, well, the Prime Minister of Greenland says we're not for sale. Denmark says they're not for sale. Who cares what the Prime Minister says? It's what the people on the ground say. Hold a referendum. Greenland will vote to become a part of the United States. Take it to the bank. Either America controls Greenland or China or Russia do. And if I'm a Greenlander, I know who I want to be with. Your reaction, your calls, next. 7:20 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, Boston's bulldozer. To buy Greenland or not to buy Greenland? That is now the question. David in Kentucky. Thanks for holding, David, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. A heartfelt condolences to you and your family.
Thank you, David.
Let me get this out. I'm sure you or many of your listeners probably watch Shark Tank.
I know of it, yes.
A very big portion of the people that go on Shark Tank have their items made in China. It doesn't matter. I kind of disagree with you on purchasing Greenland. Greenland's not going to make us economically strong because we'll never be economically strong. You go into Best Buy, everything's made in China. Phones, TVs, electronics, or Japan or Korea or Vietnam. Everything's made in other countries because we cannot afford to pay people here to make anything. You can pay people, Mexico, GM workers, Ford workers in Mexico make about $3 an hour, $3 to $4 an hour in Mexico to make cars And my brother works at GM and makes $33 an hour at GM here. If that's what's wrong with our country, they outsourced everything, and China is the economic superpower of all economics and will never be economically strong because we cannot compete with paying people $3 or $4 an hour to make something here. And Greenland is not going to make us economically strong. It's going to make, I don't know, the people with the money, the companies and, politicians rich, but it's not going to do nothing for us here. It's like, and we don't make TVs. We don't make phones. So all that stuff you're talking about, we don't make that stuff. And we'll never compete with China. Never will ever happen in our lifetime. I'm sorry. I disagree with you.
Well, David, this is why you're right. I mean, everything is made in China or in Vietnam or in these other countries, Mexico, where they're used basically sweatshop labor. You're completely right on that, David. Trump's argument is that's why we're going to start putting tariffs. So, in other words, because the strategy has been for decades, use these sweatshops, say, in China, then produce these cheap goods, and then dump them into the United States. There's no tariff. So why should somebody buy an American product, which is much more expensive because you want to pay your workers a decent wage, when you could be buying something from China at half or a third or a quarter of the price? Trump is saying those days are over. We're going to put massive tariffs on Mexico, on Canada, on China, on Vietnam, on South Korea, on any other country that has been abusing us, taking advantage of us, and using cheap labor to dump their products. That's why, by the way, Trump opposed NAFTA and said he was going to renegotiate NAFTA, which he did. And now he says he wants to renegotiate it again because, he realizes what you're saying. Look, if I'm a plant, say a GM plant, all I got to do, literally, is just go across the border into Mexico, set up a plant there, and I can pay, as you rightly put it, a Mexican worker $3 an hour to build a car. Why am I going to pay somebody in Detroit $33 an hour when I can pay somebody $3 an hour in Mexico? Then when the car is done, finished, we just sell it back into the United States tax-free. So what's the incentive for us to stay in the United States? Trump is saying, no. Now there's going to be a massive tariff I'm going to slap on every product coming in from Mexico. So that car is not going to be cheap anymore. That car is going to be really expensive. And that way it's going to force people or force companies to stay in America. And he wants to get Greenland and other places to make us have so much natural resources and raw materials that we are economically self-efficient. We can build anything here in America. What say you, David?
Okay, let's just go to the chip manufacturer that they're building out in Phoenix, Arizona. That company is owned by Taiwan. The battery plants that they're building around the country, one outside of Louisville, Kentucky, that's owned by China because we need their cobalt, their lithium and stuff to make batteries because we don't produce anything and we don't mine anything here. So we have to get it from somewhere else. So the battery company is still owned by China. The chip manufacturer in Phoenix, Arizona, owned by Taiwan. And you wonder why Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, and that's probably one of the reasons why, probably because she lined her pockets to make a deal with Taiwan to bring their semiconductor chips over here to the United States and build a factory. And so, but it doesn't really make a difference. We never will compete with the rest of the world, no matter what we do, because we can't even bring in they haven't brought no manufacturing back here to this country. I do this for a living. I'm an expediter. I expedite freight since 2005 all over the country. And these people, I mean, it's not what people.
No, I hear you. Look, David, it's a tough mountain to climb. Look, Trump is trying to undo really 40 years of betrayal, economic betrayal, outsourcing, and the deindustrialization of the United States. But what you're seeing is now his attempt is to 7:30 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just to put a exclamation point on the call that we had with a very good call, by the way, from David in Kentucky. This is what Trump is trying to reverse. He's trying to reverse the disastrous free trade deals, the open borders, the globalism, the outsourcing, the deindustrialization and the transfer of wealth of the United States to China in particular, but to other countries around the world, Mexico and others. So this is what he's trying to do. That's what he's trying to create now, a kind of an architecture, a foundation for a new American system that will really develop our resources, make us economically independent, and try to bring manufacturing back. Now, I understand David's point. He's saying, Jeff, we don't make much anymore. True. It's a very high mountain to climb. But Trump is saying, at least let's stop the bleeding and let's counter China. That's what this is really ultimately about. Trump realizes that our greatest nemesis, without question, militarily, economically, geopolitically, is communist China. And he's saying we've got to respond to China, or else China is basically going to dominate the world. And that's not a world I want to live in. And I agree with Trump. Now, just super quick on the Panama Canal. There is a masterful book, if you want to read it. It is incredible. It is by David McCullough, and it's called The Path Between the Seas. And it's the story about the building of the Panama Canal. And it's not a dry book, believe me. It's not, building canals and construction. And it shows you, chapter by chapter, the incredible sacrifices in lives, in treasure, how many American engineers gave their lives. Remember, this was the jungle of Panama in the late 19th century. Malaria, diseases. 3 out of every 4 engineers died working on the Panama Canal. That's how treacherous and dangerous it was. How many decades it took to build it. How much money and investment, capital, effort, sacrifice. It almost wasn't built, and it was beginning to be built, and it halted. It's superhuman achievement. And that Jimmy Carter just gave it away to Panama, honestly, to me, is one of the great crimes in American history. And so, really, the people don't understand what it took to build the Panama Canal and what an incredible achievement it was. And it's a choke point. It's a strategic choke point. So much of the world's global trade and shipping goes right through that canal. It is vital. And that's why China is there. That's why China effectively controls the canal. And that's why they're charging exorbitant, frankly, disgusting fees and prices to our companies, our ships, and our military. And it's a way for China now to really start to exert its influence and control in the Western Hemisphere, right in our backyard. And notice how the Chinese are slowly controlling shipping routes all over the world. Greenland is a key strategic position for shipping routes as well. It's not just for the resources. So Trump is saying, no, we've got to counter China. So I want the Panama Canal back, and I want Greenland. Now, very quick, even Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman, Democrat, is saying the obvious, which is, why is the left going absolutely berserk? You should have seen Dana Bash on CNN yesterday. He's threatening a military invasion of Greenland. He's going to invade the Panama Canal. He's going to annex Canada. Oh, my God. It's World War III. Relax. Take a drink. Stop it with the panic porn, okay? Listen to Fetterman making the obvious point. What about the Alaska purchase? Under Secretary of State William Seward, the deal of the century. What about the Louisiana purchase, where we purchased so much of American land and territory when we bought it from France in 1803? So much of America today is because it was purchased by our government. Listen to Fetterman. Roll cut 1C, Mike.
There's a lot of talk about Greenland, for example. And I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course I would never support taking it by force. But I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it and, whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana purchase? Oh, I think Alaska was a great deal too. $50 million, I think it was. It was referred to as Seward's Folly, and now that was Alaska now. So, I mean, open to having all kinds of conversations as well. And now I don't think it's not helpful to freak out.
Of course it's not. Why? Again, I look at this, I'm like, okay, well, if Greenland is valuable, and it is, and the people of Greenland, forget the government, the people of Greenland are very interested in becoming a U.S. territory, why can't we put an offer on the table? Now, by the way, it was $7 million. $7.2 million was is what we paid for Alaska when we bought it from the Russian Empire. Under Secretary of State William Seward, he was the guy that negotiated essentially the deal, and at the time he was mocked. That's why they called it Seward's Folly. Oh, you're crazy. You gave them, $7 million then was a lot of money. But then all the gold, all the resources, the oil, the natural gas, oh, my God, it turned into the deal of the century. Now, the Louisiana purchase that we got from France in 1803. So, listen now to this. You want to know what it bought for the United States under Thomas Jefferson? Listen to this, okay? This is the Louisiana purchase. Arkansas, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Minnesota, Louisiana, obviously, New Mexico, Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado. What's the problem? Trump is looking at this and saying, it worked for Jefferson, it worked for William Seward, these are great states, Alaska is a great state, why stop? Let's keep going. Greenland's on the table. Better us than China. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. If someone like Fetterman can see the value of Greenland, why can't the Democrats and the left? Hello? Mike, who do you want me to go to next, my friend? Will in Danvers. Thanks for holding, Will, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going? First-time caller.
Welcome, Will.
I actually have a friend that was on the plane with Don Jr. and Charlie Greenland yesterday, and he said it was a warm welcome, so I don't think it's totally out of the question. Another couple points to consider. Denmark, the right wing in Denmark doesn't want Greenland because Greenland votes socialist like on everything. So they would like to get rid of them to begin with. So it's actually a pretty good deal for those guys. And then another thing to consider outside of natural resources, China wants to just net the entire ocean clean, fishing vessel-wise. So I think it's really good that we would control the maritime waters up there, just to keep them out of our fishing waters, to be honest, because they will clean the oceans dry of all the fish that we eat and the Europeans eat. So yeah, we don't want them anywhere near our sphere of influence whatsoever. And empire building is not inherently evil at all. I think we should take more. I don't think it should stop at Greenland or Canada. There's plenty of other places we should totally own. I would say Cuba is one of them. But, that would make a lot of people angry, I suppose, this day and age, Jeff.
Well, Will, you can only, don't bite off more than you can chew, right? You don't want to, let's just take everything one step at a time. But no, I hear you. Look, Will, even the hostile media against Trump had to admit in their reportage that it was a very warm welcome for Don Jr., for Charlie Kirk, for James Blair, for others that were on that plane. And forget the government. The government's a socialist government. It's an anti-American prime minister. He's going to make noise. He hates the United States. But you talk to ordinary Greenlanders, and it's like a ray of sunshine for them. It's a beacon of hope. They realize that if they become a territory of the United States, they just hit the jackpot. Their standard of living is going to skyrocket. Their security is going to skyrocket. And they're going to see their island really become an economically developed first world island. And all of that incredible wealth that they have is finally going to be used, and used properly and effectively. And look, to me, Greenland is part of the Western Hemisphere. It is a way part of North America. It should be part of the United States. Look, we've made offers in the past. I know after World War II, they put $100 million? They put at that time a lot of money. And Denmark said thanks, but no thanks. But we've made offers before. So, this idea, like Eisenhower knew the value of Greenland. That's why they were serious about putting that offer on the table. So, the left is acting like this is the most insane proposal they've ever heard. No. The only thing that's insane is their reaction. Now, the question is, can Trump do it during his second term? Is there enough time? We'll see. But I love the way he's thinking, Will. And I agree with you. Greenland should be America. Panama Canal should return to America. And I'd love to see Canada as the 51st state. I know some people are saying, well, Jeff, a lot of liberals in Canada. True. But in Western Canada, a lot of conservatives. And Canada, very wealthy country. Together, we would be unstoppable. Agree, disagree, all of your calls next. 7:50 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, the liberal media now, the fake news media, in absolute full meltdown mode. When I say they're going apoplectic, they are losing their minds. Why? Because now they claim, unbelievably, that Trump wants to launch a military invasion of Greenland. All he said was, I'm not going to take anything off the table. Why? Because the United States is back. Under his leadership, we are the preeminent superpower in the world, and we are no longer, as Scott Jennings said on CNN, we're no longer going to be a shrinking violet. So we are going to stand up for our rights, stand up for our interests, and we would be stupid to take any option off the table. Now, to show you the difference in thinking between Trump and Biden, between MAGA and left-wing globalism, listen now to this, okay? If you just do the basic math, this is what many of you have been texting to Coonerman, and you're completely right. Jeff, do the math. If we just gave every Greenlander, remember there's about 57,000, roughly, that's the population of Greenland. If we gave every Greenlander $1 million, that would cost the United States $57 billion in total. So basically, you're creating an island of instant millionaires. Okay, $1 million apiece. That would still be only a third, in fact, almost a fourth of what we've sent to Ukraine. Now, the 150, 200 billion that we've sent to Ukraine is gone. much of it, as you know, siphoned off and stolen. The rest of it just literally fodder for Ukrainians to be killed by the Russian meat grinder. So that money right down a rat hole. $57 billion would get us the most mineral rich, natural resource rich island territory in the entire world. It would add massive economic, security, and strategic value to the United States. And that's what Trump is saying. Forget Ukraine. If we're going to be spending money, I can get Greenland for a quarter of the cost of Ukraine, and this will position us for the 21st century. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Aaron in the great state of Idaho. Thanks for holding, Aaron, and welcome.
Well, Jeff, I can't help but notice that you broadcast from Canada on Monday, and the very next day, Justin Trudeau resigns. What did you say to him?
I wish I had something to do with it, Aaron. Aaron, I got to ask you, Trump says we need to acquire Greenland and get the Panama Canal back. Do you agree?
I completely agree on 2 out of 3 points with Cooner Country. One, the Panama Canal. Absolutely, we never should have given that away. The Chinese control 2 ports there. If we don't take Panama back, China will. That's number one. Number two, Greenland is not just the minerals. I did some research on this. There's Noah's Ark shelters on Greenland. In case a catastrophe happens or World War III happens, they actually have bomb shelters there with seeds, of all the seeds of all the plants on Earth. So I'm kind of wondering, does Trump know something? Do we need those shelters or something? Or does he feel it would be better if we had it instead of Denmark having it, as Bernie would say? Now, here's where I completely disagree with Cooner Country. Making Canada the 51st state, that would be a disaster. Have we forgotten about the Electoral College? I mean, you can forget about California and Massachusetts. We want Canadians determining our elections. Canadian conservatives are not the same as conservatives in America. Canadian conservatives support single-payer health care. Canada just legalized assisted suicide. I just read an article yesterday on the Federalist. Doctors in Canada say, hey, wait, before you kill those people, harvest their organs. I don't want people like that in America. And they also pointed out that, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, I read an article, 45% of Canadians are either atheist, agnostic, or of non-religious affiliation. No, leave Canada alone. Canada can just stay its way. And besides, Canada is making a corrective course. They're getting rid of Trudeau. Let's see what they do by themselves.
Aaron, I'm just curious. I mean, because I think you're right. I think Canada is most likely a bridge too far. And I think Trump knows that. But on the issue of Greenland, for example, the fact that he said, look, I'm not going to take the military option off the table. Why would I do that? The media is pouncing on that, saying he's threatening Greenland and Denmark by extension, which is a NATO ally, with an invasion, with conquering their country and launching a war against them. Unprovoked aggression a la Vladimir Putin. This is the argument the media is making. Did Trump make a mistake in the way he phrased it yesterday? Or do you think this is the media deliberately distorting what Trump said and what he meant?
I agree with your previous caller. As somebody who likes to play poker himself, you don't show your hand. You have to say all things are on the table. But go to war with who? The polar bears? What we attack baby seals? Besides, we already have SpaceX, I believe, already has a spaceport there. We already have a little bit of a military presence.
Yeah, and we have a base.
I agree with you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, we have a base in southern Greenland. That was a deal that we made with Denmark, I think in the 1950s. But we have a military base in Greenland on top of the SpaceX. So we already have a military presence. You're completely right, Aaron.
Yes, let's just buy for a quarter the price of Ukraine.
Aaron, thank you very much for that call. I really appreciate it. 617-266-6868. Mike, who's next on the board? Dan in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. First of all,
Hi,
my
Dan.
sympathies on the passing of your father.
Thank you.
Jeff, what we're seeing here is we're seeing the confluence between America First and the art of the deal. Trump is going to set up massive negotiations. He's going to renegotiate the USMCA with Mexico and Canada. And I think what he's going to do is I think he's going to enter into a financial transaction with Greenland. They're going to realize that it's going to be a better deal for the Greenlanders to do business with the United States than to be under the dominion of Denmark. And, I think good times are ahead of us, Jeff. We're seeing Trump that's unfettered by impeachment hoaxes, unfettered by lawfare. We're going to see glory days over the next 4 years, I believe. And I think this is just the first part of it. He hasn't even been sworn into office, and he's already got all the world leaders on a puppet string. So we'll see what happens, but I think that Trump has been right about everything, and I think he's going to be right about these issues.
Well, Dan, I agree with you completely. And no, what you're seeing now is a resurgence under Trump of patriotism, populism, nationalism. And notice with Trump, everything has changed. The calculus is what's in America's national interest, both short-term and long-term, both economically, security, and militarily. And that's the way he's looking at everything. And notice, to me, Dan, I'll tell you, I agree with you completely. The only thing that I'm worried about is you look at the media's reaction. Is it going to be 4 years of this kind of hysteria on everything? Where, he just says a mild comment about, I'm not going to take anything off the table. Why would I take anything off the table? And suddenly, I'm not kidding, by the time they're done, no, really, you would think we got, naval ships on the shores of Greenland, and we're about to launch a military operation to conquer the entire island. Like, our troops are about to land any day now. I mean, this is how the media is trying to portray this, that he's a warmonger, he's an imperialist, he's a militarist, and all Trump is saying is, look at how much money we waste in foreign aid. Look how much money we've wasted in the war in Ukraine. Look how much money we waste all over the world. We can buy this strategic, massive landmass, this island, the biggest island in the world, sitting on this huge deposit of rare earth minerals that our military needs, our business needs, our technology needs, our economy needs. And we can get it for really, compared it to everything else we're spending on, for a song. Look, I don't think he's not going to pay $57 billion for Greenland. I'll tell you this right now. But even if he does, just for the sake of argument, he says, look, hold a referendum. You guys say you want to be independent. Fine. Add another question. Do you then want to become part of the United States? And let me sweeten the pot. Everyone will get an instant check of $1 billion. Okay, it'll cost America $57 billion. You agree, every Greenland person, every Greenlander, $1 million. Now, they'd be crazy to turn down that deal. Trump turns around and says, I've just acquired one of the most economically vital pieces of real estate for the United States that is going to be paying dividends for us for 500 years with a population of what, 57,000? That's nothing. That's a town in the United States. And we can develop it like we've developed Alaska, like we've developed so many other parts of the United States. Look, we have Hawaii in the Pacific. We have Guam in the Pacific, which is a territory. We have the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico in the Caribbean, which are territories. Why can't we have a beautiful territory in the North Atlantic? Especially now that we know not only that Greenland has all these minerals and all these raw materials, but the Arctic now is becoming a key point where you have China, Russia, other powers realizing there is so much oil and natural gas down there. Everybody wants a slice of it. And Trump is saying this strengthens our hand on every issue. It strengthens us at home. It strengthens us abroad. It strengthens us in the Arctic. And $57 billion compared to how much we give away all over the world, much of it stolen. He's saying, guys, this is a steal. This is Alaska on steroids. Is he wrong? Dan.
Jeff, he's 100% right. You know, the core belief in MAGA, in America First, is dream what is possible, not what's impossible. And that's where I vehemently disagree with your prior caller, Dave, who was very pessimistic. Trump's policy is very ambitious. It's very optimistic. And I would think we're going to see the art of the deal played out on the global level, where he didn't have that opportunity in his first term because of all the nonsense in Congress. One other thing, Jeff, I want to say is it's very important, Jeff. Yesterday, all but one member of our congressional delegation voted against the Laken-Riley Act, and it can now be said with certainty that our congressional members care more about criminal migrants than they do about their own constituents. It's abhorrent to me, and I hope you do a segment on the Laken-Riley Act.
Oh, I will. No question about it. Dan, as always, thank you very much for that call. Let me just say this, just very quickly. What 159 Democrats voted against the Laken-Riley Act. Okay, and I promise I'll give it its due time in a separate segment, but just so that people understand, the Laken-Riley Act would augment punishments, would increase the punishment for illegal aliens who commit violent, heinous crimes against American citizens. In other words, they're trying to act as a deterrent. So not only are you going to get punished like every other American, resident or American living in America, but if you're an illegal, it's going to be even an extra punishment, a harsher punishment. 159 Democrats sided with not just illegal aliens, with illegal alien murderers and rapists over the victims of crime, over American citizens. Beyond disgusting. Beyond disgusting. It makes your stomach turn. And you're completely right. The overwhelming majority of the Massachusetts congressional delegation voted against the Laken-Riley Act. I mean, and by the way, and they're ranting and raving about Trump because he wants to acquire Greenland and make a deal, maybe the ultimate deal of the 21st century, or get the Panama Canal returned to the United States. They're crazy. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just very, very quick, because we're talking a lot about Greenland. Why? Well, it's big. It's a large, massive territory. As I said, it's very, very rich in deposits of rare earth minerals, which are very vital now to a modern economy, to electronics, to cell phones, iPhones, iPads. Almost everything now is built using rare earth minerals. Never mind if you want to build missiles, tanks, fighter jets, you name it, warships, military equipment of any kind. So Greenland is making a lot of noise. But Trump is just as serious about the Panama Canal. Now, people need to understand the Panama Canal is one of the most important, vital shipping routes globally in the entire world. The number of ships, the cargo, the trade that passes through the Panama Canal is massive. As I said earlier, it's a strategic choke point. You dominate the Panama Canal, the amount of economic damage and blackmail you can inflict is almost unlimited. That's why China has made an aggressive move to control the Panama Canal. And as Aaron in Idaho rightly pointed out, they control the two key ports on one side and on the other. So in theory, it's owned by the Panamanian government. In reality, as Trump points out, it's really now controlled by China, and increasingly controlled by China. Now, as Trump has rightly said, the Panamanian government charges outrageous fees and costs, prices, that American companies, American ships, including our military vessels. So, for example, we got to get a warship, say from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast, okay, from the East Coast to the West Coast. You got to go through the Panama Canal. That's the quickest way to get there. They know that. They charge us hand over fist. I mean, they are bleeding us white. And so Trump is saying, number one, you're taking advantage of us because you know how vital it is for us. And number two, China is the one that now controls which ships can come in and which ships can be blocked. And so Trump's argument, and I think to me he's on completely solid ground. We gave the Panama Canal to the Panamanian government in 1977 under the treaty signed by Jimmy Carter, which was to me one of the worst treaties we ever signed. We gave it back for $1. That's what the Panamanians gave us, $1 for maybe the most important canal in the entire world. That was built by us, financed by us, paid by us, made by us, maintained by us. And we gave it to them for nothing. Under the conditions that, of course, it would never fall under the hands of a hostile power. Well, as Trump is saying, we gave you that gift, and now you've abused that gift. We want it back. We want it back. Now, I think he's completely right. And I think he needs to go to Congress, get the support of Congress, and then demand that the Panamanian government, and we'll pay for it. Trump is not, he's not going to send in the Marines. We'll pay for it. We'll pay a good price for it, but we want the Panama Canal back under our control. And Trump is saying, look, I'm not going to take the military option off the table, but the current status quo is unsustainable. We cannot continue to have the Panamanians ripping us off and also having China control that vital strategic choke point. In other words, he wants to kick China out of the Western Hemisphere. And he's completely right. And just so that everybody knows, China now is in Peru, it's in Cuba, it's in Chile, it's in Colombia, it's all over Central America. They're setting up plants everywhere, mining operations. They want to grab the minerals. They want to grab the fish. They want to control the Panama Canal, obviously. China now is trying to turn much of the Western Hemisphere into their influence. So they're not just interested in dominating and having primary influence over Asia or Africa. They're now making an aggressive move into Latin America, right in our backyard. And Trump is basically saying, out. Out. You may have your sphere of influence in Asia, but you're not going to dominate the Western Hemisphere. Not in our backyard. Should we demand the return of the Panama Canal and undo Jimmy Carter's mistake? 8:30 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. All right, let's go right back to Tommy in West Virginia. Tommy, you were saying you were in high school when Jimmy Carter gave up the Panama Canal, and you were saying, why? Why would you just give it away? Tommy, please pick up where you left off.
Okay. Well, anyway, with regards, that was a bad choice that Jimmy Carter made to our national interest, but you had a guy from Kentucky that called in earlier that talked about computer chip plants by Taiwanese companies in this country. And yes, they are here. But one thing that he failed to mention, that the Biden administration is heavily subsidizing those jobs. You know, and it's very different from when I worked out in Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon in the 90s, where they had a massive computer chip manufacturing building boom, where that was all private money. That didn't cost the taxpayers anything. And that's a very big difference. You know, when they say that Joe Biden created manufacturing jobs, yeah, subsidized manufacturing jobs. But anyway, Will Rogers once said, buy land. Why? Because they ain't making it anymore. And I agree with what Trump did, and I never really thought about it, but you're right. Trump is thinking long-term, way down the line, and I had the pleasure of working in the IBEW on the Alaska pipeline in Valdez, Alaska for 2 years, Prudhoe Bay for 6 months in my career as an electrician. And let me tell you something as far as a blue-collar perspective. I worked with guys in 1996 that were electricians that were retiring with defined benefit plans back then at $60,000 a year. And one guy had $400,000 in an annuity, a separate retirement fund.
Wow.
I mean, those jobs mean they mean an awful lot. And, you know, the one thing that the Sierra Club and Democrats do not tell you, the native people in Alaska, their health insurance is paid for by the oil revenues. Can you imagine if there was a referendum question in Massachusetts that, you know something, if we do offshore oil drilling, it will pay for your health insurance? Do you think people that live in the inner city are going to say, what, I'm not going to vote in favor of that? Of course they are. And, you know, really, if you're one of those people that wants free health care, do it from the perspective that, well, we've got all this natural resources in this country. You know what? We the people want a piece of the action. I don't know, Jeff.
I love it.
But, you know,
I
like
love
I
it.
say,
Tommy, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. No, and honestly, that's what I love, honestly, about you, Tommy, what I love about this audience, MAGA and Trump, is that we constantly think outside the box. And you're completely right. We have so many natural resources. We have so much natural wealth. Instead of giving it away to these globalist billionaires or giving it away to these corrupt politicians, why don't we start having it go into our pockets and benefit us? And I think that's what Trump is ultimately saying. He goes, giving away the Panama Canal, it benefited China, it didn't benefit us. Greenland now, it's the billionaires. Bezos and Bill Gates and George Soros are already there trying to mine these rare, they want the lithium and the cobalt and the graphite. They're already there mining those rare earth minerals. China's already making an aggressive move. Trump is saying, what? So I'm just going to sit by and let these guys gobble up all this precious real estate? And again, the common person is left holding the bag? I don't think so. So it's great to have a president who finally not just puts America first, but middle Americans first. Final word to you, Tommy.
Like I said, if you were to go into downtown Dudley Station in Roxbury and you were to ask the average Democrat voter, listen, if we drill for oil on federal lands in this country and it would pay for your health care, would you be in favor of voting for a referendum question? I'll guarantee you 95% will say yes. And there'll be the occasional moonbat who's white beating on a bongo drum with dreadlocks going, no way, man, it's part of the New World Order. So I rest my case.
Bingo. Tommy, thank you very much for that call. Well, look, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but this goes right to Joe Biden. On his way out, he's trying to sabotage Trump's presidency. And what did he do? A couple days ago, he announced an executive action going back to a 70-year-old law, the Outer Continental, what is it called? The Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. And in a nutshell, what Joe Biden did was he said no offshore drilling for oil or natural gas permanently. Not just for, 5 years or 10 years, but permanently along the entire Atlantic coast, the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. You're going to say, well, Jeff, why not the western part? Because they're drilling in the western part. So he can't stop that. But the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico, the entire west coast. So the east coast, the west coast, the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and the North Bering Sea, the North Bering Strait off of Alaska. In other words, he wants to kill fossil fuels. He wants to prevent drilling, to keep energy as high and expensive as possible, gas as high and expensive as possible. Now, that doesn't hurt Joey, because he stole so much money. That doesn't hurt the globalists, the billionaires, the elites. You know who that hurts? You, me, or as Tommy put it, the inner city people in Roxbury, or I don't know, take your pick, in the Bronx, or in the south side of Chicago, or wherever it is. Now, Trump says he's going to fight tooth and nail to try to get that executive action rescinded. But the problem is, by using this Outer Continental Shelves Land Act, Trump is going to have to go to court. He can't just sign an executive order. So this could get caught up in the courts now for at least a couple of years. Biden is shafting and sabotaging Trump, because Trump wants to make America energy, not just energy independent, energy dominant, to lower the price of everything by lowering gas and oil. I mean, it's sabotage, sabotage, sabotage. All in the name of climate change. But in reality, it's to prevent Americans like you and me from prospering and to keep the wealth at the top. 617-266-6868. It's about elite power and elite control. Now, let me just say one last thing, and then I want to go back to the phone lines. 617-266-6868. Being in Canada the last week or so because of my poor dad passing away, I've been talking to a lot of Canadians, people I know, friends. They came to the wake, they came to the funeral. Just overall, I've just been talking to a lot of, Canadians. And they really want to stress to me, to relate to all of you, that yes, Justin Trudeau was a disaster, the worst prime minister the country ever had. They said what Joe Biden was to America, Justin Trudeau was to Canada. However, they say that just like Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau sold Canada out to the Chinese Communist Party. And the degree to which he did it is what's truly shocking. In 2013, this was 2 years before Trudeau became prime minister, he on the record in an interview said that he greatly admired, his words, admired the Chinese communist system. And they should have taken him at his word, because he tried to imitate Beijing's dictatorial regime here in Canada. And the point being that the Canadian government has become so infiltrated with Chinese influence, Chinese money, Chinese corruption, that basically, forget the 51st state, Canada is slowly becoming a province of communist China. That's how much influence now that the Chinese exert, both economically, politically, and increasingly militarily. And so if you're trying to explain, saying, well, why? I don't understand. Greenland, I get. Panama Canal, I get. But why is Trump just relentlessly going on against Trudeau in tweet, that, or in this case, social media post, Truth Social after Truth Social after Truth Social? Why does he keep hammering Trudeau and keep going on about making Canada the 51st state? Because he is petrified, and rightly so, concerned and worried that Canada may eventually slip into China's orbit and China's sphere of influence. And that's why he's basically now saying, no. You're going to come back into the fold under the American umbrella. North America will not be ceded to China. North America will not become China's backyard. And so we have lost so much ground under Joe Biden that now we're just starting to wake up and see the Chinese haven't just infiltrated Washington or here the United States or the Chinese spy balloon, but they've got the Panama Canal. They're hungrily eyeing Greenland. They've infiltrated severely Canada. In other words, they're starting to surround us. And Trump is basically saying to China, get out. Get out. The Western Hemisphere, you will not dominate or control. And you will not meddle in our backyard. And so that's why you're seeing now the Trump doctrine unfold in front of our eyes. Greenland and American territory. Panama Canal, MAGA Canal. Back to the United States. Canada, maybe the 51st state. And as I'll discuss right after the break, the Gulf of Mexico to be renamed the Gulf of America. Should the Gulf of Mexico be renamed or rebranded the Gulf of America? Do you support this new Trump doctrine? All of your calls next. Fire. Cooner Country, I got to tell you, the text line is burning up. Many of you are making absolutely outstanding, brilliant points. You can text us 70470-70470, 850 now on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, liberalism's worst nightmare. This is from 212, and it's absolutely brilliant. Jeff, as an example of how a place like mineral-rich Alaska and Greenland could be, is beneficial for its inhabitants. Alaska, this is I did not know this. Alaska not only does not have, nor does it need a state income tax, but every Alaskan gets thousands of dollars a year, depending on the year, in oil and mineral bonuses. I'm not just talking about the workers, Jeff. Everyone in the entire state. Wow. Now I know why. In fact, Mike, let's play the cut. Let's play the cut of the, there was a documentary film crew that went to Greenland. And they were just asking, people on the street, I guess, in between the snowstorms, because it really is cold up there. Would you like to be part of the United States? Is this something you may be interested in? And listen to the response. Roll cut. Let me see here, Mike. Roll cut 1B.
Buy Greenland?
Buy Greenland.
Why do you want Trump to buy Greenland?
Because we don't want to be colonized by Danish government anymore. We get ripped every year about our minerals from Greenland. We are the richest nation in the world, and we don't get to use it. Denmark's using us too much.
Do you like America?
I love America, but people are too fun over there.
We love you. We love you. So, there you go. We're being colonized by the Danish. We have all these rich men. Nothing goes to us. We're tired of it. We want America. We want to be like Alaska. We want to get thousands and thousands of dollars in bonuses every year because, the wealth is being extracted from the ground. So, yeah, of course you don't think they'd love to be a member of the United States territory? Of course they would. That's why everybody knows you hold a referendum. It won't even be close. 617-266-6868. Okay, very quickly, one more text. This is from 917. Jeff, the formula to eliminate poverty and create prosperity for everyone and establish a strong middle class is cheap and abundant energy. This is so true. And that's precisely the reason the left does everything to prevent that. As a strong middle class is the principal obstacle to the left and their neo-Marxist takeover. Genius. Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. Why has Joe Biden and the left, the Democrats, waged war on energy production and fossil fuels? It's part of their larger plan to destroy the middle class. Cheap, abundant energy, low gas prices at the pump, which leads, by the way, to low prices everywhere. Low heating bills, low electricity is the key. Low, cheap prices is the key to creating a wealthy, prosperous middle class. Now, Trump isn't just asking for the Panama Canal to be returned or for Greenland to come under American control. He now also says it's time to rename the Gulf of Mexico. Roll cut 5, Mike.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
Of course it is. The Gulf of Mexico is in American territory. It's American water. It borders American states. So why not call it the Gulf of America? I completely agree with him. And I agree with him. I think it has a beautiful sound to it. I love the ring to it. I think to me, yes, rename the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know what took so long. Rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. So let me throw this log on the fire. Moonbats their heads are exploding over this one now. They're saying it's xenophobic and racist and jingoistic to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Now, again, I want to stress, this is all on American territory. This is not, international waters. So they have Mexico can call it the Gulf of Mexico if they want, but we can rename it the Gulf of America. Especially, look, the Gulf of now Mexico, soon to be Gulf of America, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. Why shouldn't we call it the Gulf of America? And this leads me to the Cooner Country poll question of the day. I want to ask you, Cooner Country, sponsored, by the way, by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. President Trump says that he is willing to use military force to acquire Greenland. Is he A, serious, B, trolling, i.e., he's using it as leverage? When he says he's not ruling out military force to acquire Greenland, is Trump A, serious? Do you think he really wants to start, launching an invasion and sending in the Marines? Or do you think B, he's simply trolling, looking to use it as leverage and send a message? You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Cooner, wrko.com/Cooner, KUHN as in national ER. If you prefer, you can vote on our on my X handle. I'm very active on X. My handle there at the Cooner Report, all one word. KUHN as in national ER. Lines are jammed. Mike, who do you want me to go to next? Joe in Wellesley. Thanks for holding, Joe, and welcome.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Joe.
I haven't heard any comments on the Solomon Islands, which were taken over by Chinese last year, or at least they made a lot of documents, and some of those documents fell by the wayside, and people found out what it was. Can you give any positives or negatives against that?
Joe, look, you're dead on. As I like to say, you're not 100, you're 1,000% correct. You really are. Look, they're taking over islands in the Pacific. In the South China Sea, they're constructing these fake islands, these artificial islands, and then putting military naval bases on them, and then using it to make all of these claims on Vietnam, on the Philippines, on other countries. So, and by the way, yeah, and they just cut the underwater internet cable to Taiwan. So who knows what they're planning to do now with Taiwan. They're clearly harassing and menacing Taiwan. So this is what I find incredible. China can buy up islands. China can annex islands outright, just annex them militarily. China can engage in the greatest military buildup in human history. China can build artificial islands and threaten its neighbors and make all kinds of territorial claims, both in terms of the claims of the water, fishing rights, and minerals, but even on other countries. And really harass, threaten, and violate the sovereignty of Taiwan, now cutting their own underground internet cable. That's okay. Joe Biden says nothing. Justin Trudeau says nothing. The New York Times and the Democrats say nothing. But Trump says, hey, Greenland, let's put some money on the table. If they want to join the United States voluntarily, we'll give you a very nice cash offer. You win, we win. And all of a sudden, the guy's the second coming of Vladimir Putin. So, Joe, you're completely correct. See, whether we like it or not, history doesn't wait for us. The world is a cold, nasty, brutish place. And the Chinese are on the march. They just are. They're buying up land. They're buying up minerals. They're buying up... Look, not just in the United States are they buying up farmland. They're buying up land in Africa. They're buying up land in Latin America. They're buying up... They've bought pretty much all of the rare earth minerals in Afghanistan. They've got... The moment we left Afghanistan with our tail between our legs, the Chinese moved in. And they told them, we don't care, Sharia law, you want to enslave women, you want to chop people's heads off, we don't care. But what we want is the cobalt, the lithium, the graphite, all those rare earth minerals underneath the ground. And they made them a very generous offer. The Taliban signed on the dotted line. So the Taliban now are letting China milk them white. I mean, just take everything underneath the ground. That's no problem, you see? Afghanistan can be an economic vassal of China. No problem. Trump is saying, hey, Greenland, let's make a deal that benefits everybody. And I'm not kidding. Everybody's panicking. Europeans are panicking. The Danes are panicking. The left-wing media in this country is losing their mind. You've got politicians in Canada now. I don't know if you saw this, Joe. The leader of the Green Party in Canada, Elizabeth May is her name, came out and said, well, you know what? Why doesn't California and Oregon and Washington, they could become the 11th province of Canada? In other words, you think we'll become the 51st state? Oh, no. California will become the 11th province of Canada. Wake up and smell the coffee. Justin Trudeau just buried your country. Canada now has so economically declined and stagnated. Look, I'm shocked. Grace is shocked. My sister who flew up from Arizona, Jen, and she's listening now. All we talked about, we weren't talking about my dad, the roads are atrocious. The buildings are becoming dilapidated. The inflation rate, I can't believe the cost of living in this country, Joe. The Canadian dream is dead. Canada now has become significantly impoverished because of Justin Trudeau. You think California, they'd be out of their mind to want to join Canada. So Trump is trying to make America wealthier and richer and safer. And believe me, Greenland will be wealthier and safer. The Panama Canal will be wealthier and safer. And if the Canadians ever had the guts to hold a referendum, I think they would agree to vote to become the 51st state, and Canada would become wealthier and better off and safer. But under China, nobody prospers except the Chinese. So you're right, Joe. They took the Solomon Islands, and Joe Biden didn't even lift a finger. In fact, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, they have yet to ever decry or criticize or excoriate China for what they're doing to their countries around them and to the countries around the world. So Trump is saying enough is enough. If America does not rise from the ashes, this world will be dominated by communist China. That's a fact. And Trump understands that. And what he's telling us is, great powers don't lay down because CNN wants to believe that nobody is threatening the world. Great powers move forward. Russia is moving, Iran is moving, India is moving, and above all, China is moving. The question is, will we keep up? Joe, final word to you.
From that land they bought next to all of our military bases, they've held a lot of land around there, and in the USA they've bought the land around them. Why in the hell are they doing that?
Well, they want to. They're trying to economically dominate our country. They're spying on our military bases. They're stealing our military technology by spying. And notice, they're not just buying land around military bases, Joe. You can look it up. I mean, Elon Musk, to his credit, blew the whistle on this. He said, look at all the farmland they're buying. You know, they're not buying, useless pieces of land. They're buying land rich in agriculture, rich in minerals, rich in wealth. They're buying us up piece by piece by piece. In fact, don't even take my word for it. The communist Chinese have bought more land in the United States than the entire size of Greenland. Greenland's, pretty big, massive territory. It's the biggest island in the world. So that shows you how serious the Chinese are. And they're buying up Mexico. They're buying up, I'm not talking the government, literally, they're buying land. They're buying up Peru. They're buying up Chile. They're buying up much of Africa. They're just coming in and they're buying up the gold mines, the silver mines, the coal mines. Anything China has, the Chinese are buying. Because the Chinese understand one thing, to their credit. This is a 10,000-year-old civilization. So they're wise, they're smart, they're very worldly, very experienced. They have a saying in China. It is easier to conquer an enemy by buying them off than to sacrifice a single soldier. In other words, war is stupid. According to them, it's ultimately counterproductive. It hurts you, it hurts the other country, it creates a massive mess. Why fire a bullet? Why start a war when you can just buy them off? And that's what communist China is doing. It's been methodical, systematic. They're buying up, the Silk Road. I mean, they are literally buying up industries, minerals, countries, sectors to make themselves the middle kingdom again, meaning the center of the world. And that's why, I'll never forget this. I met an anti-communist Chinese dissident. He was a writer for Insight. It was a sister publication of the Washington Times that I was the editor of. Liu Ming was his name. And he was from Hong Kong, and he wrote dynamite stuff against the Chinese, the communist Chinese. And I'll never forget this. We were sitting down having lunch at the Washington Times, and brave man, courageous man, because he was putting himself and his family at risk for exposing what the real intentions of Beijing were. And he was adamant on this point. He said, you Americans don't understand. You only think about today. You never think about tomorrow. And he goes, Don Rumsfeld, at the time Secretary of Defense, came out and said, oh no, America will be the dominant power of the world for the next 50 years. And I'll never forget Yu Ming. He was pounding the table saying, in China, 50 years is nothing. It's nothing. They think in centuries, not in 50 years. And he said, you don't understand. The Chinese, the communist Chinese, the government, the regime, has a plan by 2100, by the end of this century, he said, to be the world's preeminent superpower. They're patient, they're methodical, they're disciplined, and if you notice, from 2006, that's when I met Yu Ming at the Washington Times, only 18 years later, look how much the world has changed. China is now the preeminent manufacturing power. Soon it will be the number one economic power. In terms of its land army, it is the biggest military power in the world. I mean, they're on the rise. Look how many countries now they control or influence. Look how global and powerful their reach is. Look how much clout and influence they have here. They bought the President of the United States. They bought Nancy Pelosi. They buy the Speaker of the House. They buy the most powerful senators. Washington is effectively Chinese-occupied territory. And Trump is the only guy saying, if we don't fight back, we're gonna go the way of Hong Kong. And I got to give them their due. Look how they're just encircling Taiwan. And just bit by bit by bit, they're swallowing Taiwan. There's no military amphibious invasion. They just take over the sky. They choke them economically. Now they're cutting off their internet underground, the underground cables, the cables in the sea. They're just slowly but surely, inch by inch, like a cobra, just bringing you in and bringing you in, and before you know it, they've swallowed you. Joe, thank you very much for that call. Look, and if you really want to know the truth, who do you think owns CNN? It's China. MSNBC, China. I mean, they use other front companies, but much of the American media is owned by China. So that's why they have to portray Donald Trump as the boogeyman. The Chinese government openly said they wanted Kamala Harris to win at all costs. That tells you everything you need to know. Their number one enemy is Donald Trump. You know why? Because he's an American patriot. He's not bought and paid for. They don't own him. They can't control him. They can't run him. And that's why Trump, this is a wake-up call. He's saying, we have to counteract China before it's too late. Greenland will be ours. The Panama Canal will come back. And China, get the hell out. Your days of meddling in America and America's backyard are coming to an end. It's time to put America first. 9:19 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868. Okay, just to show to you how serious the Chinese are about expanding, and their expansionism right into our backyard. Okay? Listen now to this. This is from 508. You can text me, text us here, 70470. Jeff, the Chinese are already building a road through the Darien Gap in Panama as we speak, heading straight for, you guessed it, the Panama Canal. Now, if you know anything about the Darien Gap, that is the area, it's a stretch of jungle in Panama whereby all of the illegals are being trafficked into the United States. The Chinese migrants are coming through there, but migrants from all over, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, Africa, the traffickers fly them in or ship them in to the Darien Gap, and then from the Darien Gap, that's how they come through Central America, El Norte, Mexico, and then into the United States. Well, there's China building a road right there in the Darien Gap. Why? To flood our country with illegals, to destroy us from within. And heading straight for the Panama Canal. So that'll cement and consolidate their control. This key, vital shipping route, strategic choke point, the Chinese want to control it all for themselves. That's why Trump is saying to the Panamanian government, you lied to us. You said you would respect the Panama Canal, respect its independence, treat America fairly. Instead, you've given it to China. Now we want it back. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is from Eric on Messenger, and man, is he is really on point. For decades, Jeff, we heard that America was the last frontier. Trump wakes people up and says, hello, you narrow-minded people. Greenland is the next frontier. Don Jr. will now go down in history as the new Lewis and Clark expedition. Thomas Jefferson would say Trump has the mind of a founding father. Imagine if Jefferson caved to his opposition. A lot of people didn't want the Louisiana Purchase. There was tremendous opposition to the Louisiana Purchase. I mean, I listed all the states that were carved out or were created out of the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, 1804. So I think, Eric, it's a beautiful way to phrase it. Trump has the mind of a founding father. He is a patriot, and he doesn't think small. He thinks big. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Alex in Florida. Thanks for holding, Alex, and welcome.
Hey, Tom. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Alex.
My first point that I wanted to make to you, and I appreciate you, is that George W. Bush was the worst president we ever had. At least Carter tried to be honest. George W. Bush added $20 trillion to our debt with the war in Iraq and the war on terror. By far the worst president we've ever had. Anyway, globalism has been taking place for a long time. The whole reason we're pumping oil in Saudi Arabia and in the Middle East and other places as opposed to pumping it here in the United States, which we have plenty, is because of globalization. Any expert in the field of like pollution and whatever they call it that pollutes the Earth's atmosphere will tell you if you pump oil in Saudi Arabia or in the United States, it pollutes the whole world if you don't do it smart and with responsible, I guess it's green, I don't know what you would call it, pollution. You have to do it responsibly. Doesn't matter where you're doing it, we all share the same earth. The reason it's over there is because of globalization. The same thing is is it's the same thing as far as like where Taiwan builds our computer chips and stuff like that. We can build them here. We just need to do it. We need to say we're going to spend 2 years and bring that industry back here. Make America great again. It's all globalization. They say it's to save money on employees and stuff like that. It's not. We can streamline a system where we can do it just as efficiently and pay American workers what they deserve to be paid.
Alex, amen. I mean, I don't know if I agree with you on George. He was a very bad president. There's no question. The Iraq War, for example, was a disaster. Worst, I think, is Joe Biden. But we can agree to disagree on that. But George W. Bush was a bad president, no question. But look, to the rest of what you said, amen. And this is what Trump is really fulfilling what George Washington wanted for our country, which is for us to be economically independent. To be independent in every sense, but especially economically. And remember what George Washington said, Providence has blessed us. We have all of the wealth, all of the resources, all of the minerals that we need here in the continent of the United States. And that's why he said, avoid entangling alliances. Don't get involved in these endless wars overseas. We have a brilliant, great constitutional republic. We have everything that we need to create a country and a republic that will become the envy of the world. And all Trump is now doing is he's just updating George Washington for the 21st century. Because you're right. To make computer chips here, you got to have these rare earth minerals. Greenland is full of rare earth minerals. And he's not saying take it over by force. He's saying, no, like the Louisiana Purchase or Alaska, buy it.
Hi, everybody. It's Sandy Shack. Now, you've all heard the word resolute, right? Purposeful, determined.
9:30 on, actually 9:32 on the great WRKO, Jeff Cooner. Liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. 617-266-6868 is the number. Rob in Maine. Thanks for holding, Rob, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me okay, buddy?
I can hear you, Rob. Can you hear me?
Yes, and there's a lot of love here, non-sexual love.
Thank you, Rob.
And just before I start, your dad sounds like he was a great guy, and the older I get, the greater my dad seems. I bet you feel the same way.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I mean, I don't want to... It's been a very emotional time for me the last 7-8 days, but it was a real blow. It was a real blow to lose my father, and as I said in my eulogy at his funeral, he championed God, country, family. He escaped communism. He had a very hard life. He was tough. He was resilient. He showed me that, life is not fair. Life is not easy. And you have to be willing to take blow after blow after blow. And the only saving grace for me is that my dad really suffered from Parkinson's the last 10 years of his life. Severe Parkinson's. The last couple of years were brutal. He couldn't speak. He couldn't walk. He had herniated disc after herniated disc. It was a form of torture. And so you never want to see your parent go. It was, my mother had died 15, 16 years ago. But in a sense, it was a relief. He really became a prisoner in his own body. But, no, a lot of, my children are taking it very hard. Grace is taking it very hard. She loved my dad. She admired my dad. And this one, I think, is going to stay with me for a very long time. But thank you, Rob. I appreciate your condolences. It means a lot to me.
Yep, well, he made you what you are, and my dad made me what I am, so that's all good stuff. Listen, I did want to say something, though. Talking about taking stuff off the table, I think what Trump's doing, being a master deal maker, is he's putting some things on the table rather than taking things off the table. For instance, you talk about Panama, Canada, and Greenland. Those are things that are going on the table vis-a-vis Tibet, vis-a-vis Taiwan, vis-a-vis Ukraine. So, he uses this stuff to make deals. Doesn't mean he's taking anything off the table. He's actually putting some things on the table. So that's all I wanted to say, and you take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob. No, I agree. I really agree. Look, he's expanding the geopolitical chessboard. That's what he's really doing. And, forget how the media is melting down. They hate him, and they're going to hate him for the next 4 years because ultimately they're traitors. One of the best lines and one of the truest things Trump ever said was that the media is the enemy of the people. And they are. And you can see it again clearly in this instance. But he's now got the Chinese on their heels. They're not used to getting pushback like this. And they're not. America is back. American greatness is back. American ambition is back. America's presence in terms of counteracting the rise of China is back. And you can tell they're not happy about it. Good. It's about time. And Trump is letting our allies know we're not going to get ripped off. And that's what he's telling Canada loud and clear. The biggest story in this country, just so that all of you know, it's not the 51st state. They kind of think he's a little bit trolling on that. I mean, some love it, others don't like it. It's that he's going to impose a 25% tariff on all goods and products coming from Canada and Mexico. And the reason why is he says, look, I'm tired of these trade deficits. You keep ripping us off. You're not treating us fairly, and you're taking advantage of our generosity. Those days are over. Uncle Sucker is over. Uncle Sam is back. And so it's not just China. He's putting everybody on notice. And by the way, yesterday at his press conference, I don't know if any of you caught this, he put NATO on notice. He told all the NATO members, I'm sick and tired of you guys not meeting your defense obligations that you all agreed to under the terms of the treaty. 3% GDP has to be spent on the military. Do you know that Canada spends less than 2%? They're the most feckless of all the NATO allies. I'm telling you, worse than France, worse than Germany. Since everybody's talking about Greenland and Denmark, worse than Denmark. They're the cheapest. Canada is the cheapest when it comes to spending on the military defense under its NATO obligations. And so Trump is rightly saying, you guys are getting a free ride off of our back. Because we have to spend so much on the military, we have more than enough to protect the United States. But we got to protect Canada, we got to protect Europe, we got to protect much of the world. I'm sorry, pony up. You don't want to pony up? We're not going to be your sucker anymore. Now, he also warned Hamas. And he made it very clear to Hamas, he repeated it, that if all the hostages, about 100 left, if all the hostages are not returned to both Israel, and there's a few American hostages still being held as well, dual citizens, Israeli-American, if they're not returned to the United States and Israel, as Trump put it, all hell will break loose in the Middle East. In other words, he's telling Hamas, look, by the time I'm inaugurated, on Inauguration Day, if those 100 hostages are not released, you are going to reap the whirlwind. You are going to rue the day. Now, Hamas has already been defeated and crushed by Israel. Trump is basically telling them, we're going to wipe you out. Like, you guys you've already lost the war with Israel. Don't make it worse. I'm not Joe Biden. I'm not going to grovel. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to be soft. I'm not going to appease. Release the hostages if you know what's good for you. On every level, whether it's China, whether it's the Western Hemisphere, whether it's NATO, whether it's Hamas in the Middle East, America is back. 617-266-6868 is the number. Agree, disagree. Mike, who do you want me to go to next? Rich in Natick. Thanks for holding, Rich, and welcome. Rich, we can barely hear you. It's like we'll try to reestablish connection with you. Tom in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, Tom, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Hi, Tom. Welcome to the welcome.
My condolences to your dad. He sounded like a great man.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful children. Just 3 points, Jeff. One, my fear is that the Chinese have already booby-trapped the Panama Canal. I mean, why else would they be over there? If we ever had a war or a conflict with China or something going on with them, that thing's going to be blown sky high. And if we do take it over, we're going to have to really check that place out carefully and make sure we remove all their traps. Point one. Point two, Greenland is essential, not only for the minerals, but the strategic location on the planet for missile defense, as well as offensive missiles to Russia, China, and elsewhere. Just absolutely essential place, as well as the sea lanes with submarines and Chinese ships and Russian ships going back and forth. And third, if you want to find something to do with the illegals that we can't deport, let's go have them mine minerals in Greenland or up in the Hudson Bay and shovel snow. Those are my...
Tom, you're a genius. Have you ever measured your IQ? I guarantee you it's above 140. I'm telling you. You're an absolute genius. Let me just take missile defense. That's another reason why Trump mentioned this in private. He goes, it is of such strategic importance now with these hypersonic missiles that Russia has developed and with these new missile technology that China has basically stolen from us. He says, we've got to have a better missile defense shield protecting the American homeland. Greenland will be our front line for that. So it'll not only protect America, it'll protect the Arctic, it'll protect Europe, it'll protect our allies. It's both offensively, if we want to ever, God forbid, launch missile strikes, Greenland would be great. Defensively, we could protect the homeland by shooting down these Russian hypersonic missiles. So from a geopolitical, geomilitary point of view, you're right. Greenland is essential and vital. And that's why Trump says, let's make a deal. I want to acquire it. How much do you want me to put on the table? What's your price? Tom, as always, thank you for that call. 617-266-6868. America has been sleeping for too long. It's now waking up under Trump.
All hell will break out. If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is. And they should have given them back a long time. They should have never taken them. There should have never been the attack of October 7th. People forget that. But there was. And many people are killed. They're no longer hostages.
That was Donald Trump yesterday in a fiery, heated press conference, and he threw down the gauntlet, telling the leaders of Hamas, I will destroy you. You better bring back the hostages, release them before I get inaugurated, or I'm telling you, you'll rue the day. So, again, Donald Trump is letting Hamas and the Islamic terrorists know he's not Joe Biden. 9:49 on the great WRKO. Jeff Cooner, Boston's bulldozer. Let me just say this. Many of you on the text line on Messenger are saying, Jeff, I'll bet you the best steak, you pick the steakhouse. Those hostages will be freed before or on the day Trump is inaugurated. I'm not taking that bet because you're right. You know, remember, this happened to Jimmy Carter as well. Iran refused to release all of those American hostages until the very day that Reagan was inaugurated. Because Reagan basically sent a back-channel message to them, what Trump just said in public. Don't play with me. I'm not Jimmy. If those hostages aren't back, you're going to be in big, big trouble. we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. And that's essentially what Trump is telling Hamas. You've lost the war. It's been a disaster, but it's going to be even worse if you don't bring those hostages and send them home. Free those hostages if you know what's good for you. So I'm going to make a prediction. You can hold me to this. Those hostages are going to come home. They're going to be released either on the day of Trump's inauguration or just before Trump's inauguration. Peace through strength. It worked for Reagan. It worked for Trump during his first term, and it's going to work again. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Mike, who's next up on the board? Let's go to Rich in Natick. We've a reestablished connection. Rich, thanks for holding and welcome.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear, Rich. Go ahead.
Just first off, my condolences for the loss of your father, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Rest in peace. Yes,
Thank
rest
you.
in peace. Okay, bye-bye Green New Deal. Hello, Greenland New Deal. I don't like Gulf of America. I sort of like Gulf of Melania. It has a nice ring to it. And as far as the Panama Canal, the DJT Canal. So let's start renaming everything. What do you think, Jeff?
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Rich, do you think that the Republican Party has the stomach, because Trump is getting already a lot of blowback? I mean, I don't know if you know this. Caitlin Collins on This Is CNN literally came out yesterday and said that the Panama Canal Treaty was one of Jimmy Carter's biggest accomplishments. The guy who gave it away for free. The guy who basically allowed it to be swallowed up by China. It's one of Jimmy's greatest accomplishments. This massive betrayal. So already he's taking massive criticism and fire from the media, from Democrats. Rhinos are uncomfortable, saying this smacks of imperialism, militarism, American jingoism. So, he's going to have a lot of political opposition up on Capitol Hill. Do you think he can get the canal back? And do you think he can make this deal for Greenland?
Well, I'd love to see the Greenland deal go through because of the minerals and the money that can be made there, and also the military strategic location. As far as getting back the canal, it probably just needs to be reworked. Where Jimmy Carter didn't write the book "The Art of the Deal." He would have wrote a book like "How to Fold Like a Cheap Lawn Chair." But we should be able to use that canal for free, whether it's just regular civilian ship or a military. We shouldn't have to pay any of those fees to pass through there. And also the deal was part of the deal, I guess. I don't know this firsthand. When they gave them the canal, was so that it can't change hands of who controls it.
Bingo.
So, with China being there.
Yes, Rich, you nailed it. You nailed it. Again, Rich, thank you for that call. In the treaty, the only good thing in that treaty is that it specifically says you cannot hand over control of the Panama Canal to a foreign power, especially a hostile foreign power. So by allowing China to have those two key ports and effectively control and run the canal, China has violated the treaty. The Panamanian government has violated the treaty. I'm telling you, that's going to be Trump's argument, and he's completely right. So his argument is, no. The treaty was conditional on a few things. One of them being, you can't have another country run it, never mind China. Now we want it back. The treaty has been broken. The treaty has been violated. We want it back. Now, we'll pay you for it. We'll do this. In other words, as Pelosi told Biden when they launched that coup, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. And Trump is saying, look, let's do this the easy way. We'll pay you handsomely. We want control of the canal back. Or, I've got the airborne ready. I've got the Marines ready to go. Remember, we overthrew Noriega in 1989. So we can overthrow a president in Panama. Taking the canal is nothing. And so that's why Trump is saying, look, I don't want to go military, but I'm not taking anything off the table. Now, my prediction, you put enough pressure on the Panamanian government, especially if you're willing to, because they're desperate for cash, and you put a good deal on the table, they'll take it in a heartbeat. The Chinese will try to bribe them, and the Chinese will scream bloody murder. But Trump, the art of the deal, is going to tell China to get lost if they know what's good for them. So what we're now seeing, this is what to me is incredible. The man is still, 12 days, whatever it is. He's still less than 2 weeks away from becoming inaugurated. And he's already reshaping American foreign policy. He's already reshaping the world. My prediction, Donald Trump, this term will be one of the greatest terms in American history. Bye-bye.